Now I can speak. Ladies and gentlemen, calling to order the Planning and Zoning meeting for February 26, 2026. If you'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We'll do a roll call. Will you state your name?
Josh here.
Eric here.
Richard here.
Okay. Paul here. Alan here.
And Fran here. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes.
I had a question on the minute.
Oh.
On item 6, I realized I was late at the last meeting, but I came in during 4 and 5, and my vote for item 6 is not recorded on here. I'm just saying that so you know I read this stuff.
Call. I'll amend my motion to approve the minutes with the addition of Alan's vote being added to number 6.
Oh, you're right. But you didn't show up until 6:15, which is partially through into item number 5.
Yep,
Not 4.
right. My vote was counted on number 5.
Right. It's just a miss on 6. It'll be added.
Thank you.
Josh, will you repeat it, hon?
I motion to approve the minutes with adding Alan's vote to item number 6.
I second.
Does everybody agree?
Yes.
Yes.
Yay.
Let the record show that the consent agenda was passed unanimously. Because my email is not working and there's no agenda here.
It's right there in front.
Right? Oh, thank
Yep.
you. For those who are slow on the uptake. Sorry. Consideration and approval for 1006 North Hamlin shed placement. April, the floor is yours.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you, and thank you, Board. This item came in as a building permit request for a shed at Mr. Thomas Siebert's home. And the code does not allow sheds to be placed on any other yard than the rear yard. And he needs to place the shed in his side yard. He doesn't have the space in his rear yard. So what the code requires in that case is that it must be a request of the Planning and Zoning Board to determine that the shed can be located in the side yard instead of the rear yard. He otherwise meets all of the setback requirements. And of course, it would not be intruding into the front yard or front plane. So based on that, and there is an attachment that shows the proposed location in an aerial. Based on what's presented with this application here, staff recommends that the board approve the placement of the 8 foot by 12 foot shed in the side yard as proposed. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Does anyone have any questions?
I don't have any questions on that.
Are you the applicant?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to say anything?
Oh, I'm just, I'm glad that I was able to go through the process, and April was very, very supportive.
Can you speak into the stand up and speak?
Oh, just come up here.
Can you state your name and your address for the record?
My name's Thomas Zebart. I live at 1006 North Hamlin Avenue, Howey-in-the-Hills, Florida. And we built the house in 1999, been here 25 years. And my wife just told me to add a shed. So this is really the only place that it fits with the house. I've talked to all of my neighbors, Hugh and back, and they agree with the shed placement. And as I ride my bike a lot, and I ride around Howey a lot, and I've noticed lots of sheds that are in the sides of yards and not in the back. And actually, my neighbor Curtis, his shed is in his side yard also. So I was hoping that I could place mine there also, and it's going to be the same color as the house, and it'll look just like the house next to it. So
Thank you.
yes, thank you.
Board, do you have any questions?
I don't have questions for him, but I'm probably going to go off on a tangent about sheds, and I don't want to hold this gentleman up. Me personally, if y'all don't have anything, I would motion to approve the shed placement for 1006 North Hamlin as provided by April in the side yard.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Now we have to take public comment, so please, we're not going to vote yet. Would anyone like to come forward and make public comment? Anybody online, John, who would like to make public comment?
If you're online and would like to make public comment, please press Alt-Y or Option-Y. Raise your hand.
I realized that I made a mistake. Is Dina online?
No.
Thank you. I didn't check.
I would have.
Yeah, he was.
Okay, now we'll take a roll call vote. Josh, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Eric, yes.
Richard, yes.
Fran, yes.
Paul, yes. Alan, yes.
Recommendation passes unanimously. John's writing that all down. Now, that doesn't mean you get to do it yet.
Does it still have to? No, I don't think it has to.
It
Okay.
only goes to the planning and zoning board.
Just us.
Well, I'm
So he's
mistaken.
good.
Everything else has to go to town council.
This one does it?
Apparently not.
Oh, man, I love coming to town council.
You're the only.
You saved yourself.
Thank you.
Now you have to sit here for the next 3 hours and 45 minutes, so it feels like town council.
Can I segue off of that?
You may,
Okay.
since we're on this topic.
So,
He may he not?
I would just have him do that during board comments.
okay, that's fine. I can wait then.
Unless it's related to this topic.
It is related to this topic, but I didn't want to hold him up if he wanted to leave. That was my biggest thing.
It's related to this item.
Yes,
Uh,
yes. You want to talk about?
Specifically, not this item, not his placement, because his falls under that F.
But you may if you
Yeah.
like.
I'd like to hear.
Yeah,
It's done.
his item's done, and that's why I didn't want to hold him up. It's just the shed placement in general, like the requirement on land development code. So I can wait till the public
There's
board
not,
comment.
if
That's
it's
fine.
not regular general public.
You guys are asked for that.
Okay, so I guess we can't talk about this item even though we're on this item. We'll just wait one minute.
We'll wait.
So public comments for anything whatsoever. Oh, wait, I do have a public comment. I have to read this. Somebody sent this to me, so bear with me for just one moment. This is from Sarah Johnson, written to Counselor Everline. Counselor Everline asked me to read the following letter.
It's forever.
It's an email, sarah.johnston@publix.com. sarah.johnston@publix.com.
Oh, so she represents public. She's not a resident.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Everline, thank you for reaching out to me regarding the facade of our new store in Howey-in-the-Hills. As we discussed, we have reviewed the possibility of adjusting the facade to the rendering you shared with us. However, we unfortunately cannot accommodate your request at this time. Had we been aware 6 weeks ago, we would have been more than happy to discuss opportunities for adjustments. Thank you for understanding. We look forward to being part of the community. All the best. Sarah, in parentheses, Taft Johnston, Publix Supermarkets Incorporated Real Estate Manager. I do have a telephone number for, would you like that? I can forward you this letter if you would like. Would you like that?
Yes, please.
Okay.
What date did she write that letter?
This email was Tuesday, February 24th, 2026.
She knew 6 weeks ago. When did we have our zoning meeting on the public's?
She did, well, yes. Mhm.
Yeah, when was-
Somebody knew.
Somebody knew, but
She
apparently not her.
Okay.
Okay.
The guys that stood here and represented him did.
Yeah.
sure did. Why didn't they report to her?
Very valid questions.
Well, we could ask Mr. Everline to write back to her and say that, find out who was here.
The
what
representatives that were here, that's a very good
and then
point.
about it.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Okay, so that's, anybody else would like to make public comment, whether in this room or online? Nobody. Thank you. We're going to close public comment and now we'll have board comment and we'll start with you.
So I don't know if y'all are aware of the restrictions on shed placements in Howie. I had to deal with it myself at the beginning of 2022. I was lucky enough to find loopholes. I have a pie-shaped lot that is very odd. And since then, the loopholes have been closed. But I was able to put mine in as a workshop, put it on the side of my house, meet the setback requirements and all that. But again, it was because of ambiguous wording in there. Now, one of the big things since then is workshops and sheds, for whatever reason, are required to be behind the side plane of the house. So they're not visible from the street.
May I interrupt you just for a moment
Yes,
to make a
absolutely.
comment? So the mayor, not the current mayor, not the previous mayor.
Mhm.
So Mayor Sears, his big, like everybody has their pet peeve or why they're on a board or whatever. And his big thing was sheds.
Understand that, and I know that, and I'm glad you brought it up, and I didn't have to.
Yeah.
So that's my whole thing, is it was somebody's pet peeve.
Yeah.
There was no rhyme or reason to why it has to be behind a house. My biggest thing, and I brought it up with pools, that they can push through, and that's fine. But my biggest thing is we're restricting people's land use. Like this gentleman was a prime example, and he was lucky because he had nowhere else to put it. So it was a simple follow letter F, go through the planning and zoning board, not a problem. Most people have to come in and pay for a variance to use their own land.
And you know, all those prices just went up if you were here at
Yep.
town council
At
meeting.
minimum, it's 1,400, and that's gone up. So that's my problem, is I don't understand the reasoning behind. When again, he said it himself when he was here, he drove around, his own neighbor has it on the side, and I get that might have been years ago prior to it being changed. But one of my problems is that was someone's pet project that put it behind houses, and then what I found funny is a current sitting councilor had the problem right before he became a town councilor. That mayor's the one that built his house,
Right.
and it was put outside the footprint.
Well, no, actually, it existed before the house was
Right.
built.
Well, then
Because they-
technically they should have made him build the house to get the shed behind.
They put that pad there and moved the shed to that location and built the house, all the same person
Right.
putting the pad and the house down.
I thought that was already there
There was a
and they divided.
There was a shed, but it got
moved the
moved.
shed over.
They divided the
They
land.
moved the shed over, but they knew where they were going to put the pad and they knew where they
Oh,
were going to
okay.
put the house pad, and they did not.
Right.
Liar.
So as someone who went through it,
Mhm.
when I found that out, because I did a lot of digging, I was ticked because that pulls the rules for thee, not for me.
Mhm.
That's
Totally.
a problem. I think it's something we need to look at. And it can't just be, oh, well, again, this gentleman, he had the perfect way. He didn't have to spend $1,400. But I think there's somebody in Benicia that's having problems right now with shed placement.
There is.
And again, I'm not saying we should allow it in the easement. That is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying easement should not be touched. We had one in Tallahassee. They put it up. They didn't ask for it. They were 4 inches into the easement, and town council said, move it 4 inches. And that I'm fine with. But I don't really understand why we're restricting people's land use. I mean, this is people's land. They paid for it. They pay tax. I don't pay their taxes.
Mhm.
If they're asking to put it in the front yard, totally different.
Well-
There was a gentleman over there that had to because he had nowhere. Like there was one spot in his
There's a
entire lot.
triangle.
Right. He had a
lot.
super weird lot, and he got approved for that. But the vast majority of people, especially in Old Howie And decent sized lots in Tallahassee and Benicia, like if they get a pool and then they want a shed later, there's nowhere to put it.
But a lot of times in the subdivisions,
Mhm.
they can't put it on the side because it goes into the,
Possibly. And I will speak for phase one of Tallahassee. Just about everybody can put it in their side yard.
but,
Phase two is totally different.
oh, right.
Phase two is totally different because they're
But then
tighter.
try to explain to somebody in phase two that they can't have what phase one has,
Well, and again,
you know?
theirs, they only have 5 foot
Right.
side lots. So
Mhm.
again, they would be an easement. So that's my whole thing is if we're, as long as we're not going to easement, which I know Morgan doesn't want anything in easements. We don't want anything in drainage and all that. But I just don't understand. And nobody's ever been able to answer me of the why besides it was somebody's pet project.
Mhm.
And then again, to me, to have the audacity to make that rule and then not even follow your own rule when you build somebody's house, that to me is a problem. And I think it's something we as a board can bring up to town council to address. I know code was changed not long ago, but I think this was overlooked. And I know one of the things that again kind of closed the loophole is workshops were now made to be put behind houses as well.
Right. Mhm.
Because that's how I got mine through. Because I said, oh, it's a workshop. I'm put it over there. Like, well, you have to run electric to it. And I said, show me in black and white where it says that. It didn't before. It does now. And again, because I found that loophole and worked through it, they closed that loophole.
Right.
But again, we're not addressing the bigger problem of if Alan wants to put a shed on the side of his house, why can't he? As long as he's not putting an easement. What if he wants to get a pool someday?
And we have made restrictions on sheds. They need to look like the house and that
And
kind of
that,
thing.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
And back in the day, sheds were things that rusted,
Mhm.
right? You didn't have an option. They were made out of metal and that was the end of it, you know, and so they, you know, a couple years in, you don't want to see everybody's rusted shed, right? So you can see why that was
No,
somebody's.
I understand that. I can tell you in the HOA, like in Tallahassee, you cannot have a wood or you cannot have a metal or aluminum shed. I'm sure it's in Benicia as well. You're not permitted to have metal or aluminum. It must be made out of wood.
Oh, interesting.
It is
Can
required.
Can it be that plastic that looks like wood?
They don't want plastic either because the problem with plastic is you run into the issue with the town of hurricanes.
Oh.
So again, there's HOAs are pretty strict with that. And again, in ours, the only thing like placement wise, we're not as strict, but we have like the town doesn't have a restriction on height. Like you could do a giant kind of barn.
Oh, no, they do because some guy wanted to put not a shed, but like a thing for his
RV.
RV, and it was too high.
Well, that yes, certain height there, but I'm saying your standard shed, like if you did the barn style,
No, it was in Howey.
like in the HOA, it's a 7'4" max roof height.
Mhm.
So that is something that we require. And again, if you look in the code, up to 144 square feet, technically you can kind of mismatch it. But after 144, it does have to match it.
Mhm.
So again, I'm not saying propose the wording changes there. I'm thinking that we need to consider changing the placement of them. I don't think it makes any sense to sit there and say it has to be right here.
So you would just say it has to be behind the front plane of the house?
I would think so, yes. I think as long as you're behind, or you could even say 8 feet, 10 feet. Like I know in Tallahassee, and I'm sure in Benicia as well, a fence must start 8 feet back.
Right.
So ours is 8 foot back. So you could say, hey, you cannot go beyond 8 feet or something, but you also cannot go in an easement. Obviously, I mean, you probably need to state that. It should be known. But of course, you can't go into easements. But whatever, maybe town council.
Well, if you state a side, a clear side
Right.
setback or something
Right.
like that.
You cannot touch side setbacks. You cannot touch rear setbacks. I think all those things are
At
good.
least X feet back from the front plane
Right.
of the.
And again, if you have a 5 foot setback, maybe they can say, hey, you know what, put it at 7 feet. I know mine was weird. They told me 12 and a half feet.
Because it makes 25 on either. I don't know.
It was totally random. So I put it at 13 just to be safe.
That 12 and a half is the side setback for a primary building.
Right. Right. So that, and again, it's completely random. And that's my whole thing is again, I had asked previously, I think town council when I was doing this, and they didn't have an answer of why it was there besides it was somebody's pet project.
Well, I just do want to say, so that in case you're not aware, what the gentleman got up and said is something that we cannot take into consideration. And that was all of my neighbors, or as I drove around town,
Yep.
that's how it was. Because I want to explain with having a real estate background, that it's not the person, right? It is the land, and why it can't go, what a variance is, no matter what it is, a pool or whatever, no matter what it is, it's the land. Why can't it go where we say in the rules it can go? Okay, so it's the specialness of the land. And even if they're identical parcels because they're next to each other or something like that, it doesn't matter. They're not identical because it's not that piece of land, it's the next piece of land. So as we move forward, we need to take that into account, because very often we have people who come in and want a variance and they say, because I'm disabled, I need a special pool, or because I'm disabled, I need a workshop. We've heard it all, and that I feel very sorry for those individuals, but we can't vote or recommend on those items. We have to recommend on the land, not the specialness of the individual, the uniqueness of the property.
I think a lot of the ones in, especially in Old Howie, that were approved were prior to the code being changed, would be my guess.
Right.
And I do think
Or a
that
code
we-
being made.
Right. I do think that we would almost eliminate variances on sheds by allowing placement on the land, as long as you follow X setbacks, don't put in easements. And again, my biggest problem at the end of the day with a lot of it is just restricting land use for owners. That's really where I'm coming from. And again, it doesn't affect me at this point. I have one in, it's permitted and all that. But I've heard from other people in Talashe that they're like, yeah, I don't have room in my backyard because I put a pool. And if I put it behind it, I go within that 5 feet. And there's people that have those pie-shaped lots that they're like, I really want the backyard open.
Mhm.
And I mean, again, mine's almost 200 feet deep. So if I wouldn't be able to put it where I was at and I put it right behind my house, I'm like, man, that's ruined prime real estate for anything.
So can I ask, in this particular case, did you see that there was anything peculiar to the land itself that required the shed to not
On this one,
placed
oh,
in the backyard?
I saw it and overhead at Google Earth was trees. So I'm assuming I could barely see the house.
I mean, because he had about 50 feet in the back from property line to house, as opposed to 25 feet on the side. But I'm just
I just
clarifying. In
looked
this
on
case,
mine. I just saw trees everywhere, and I went off the trust that April knows what she's doing. And she stated that it made sense to put it in the side. So that's kind of where, again, when I looked at it, I even drove by, it just looked like trees, 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 trees.
And I would hate to cut down a tree to make a.
Right. That, and you cutting down 100-year-old oak tree for a shed.
I have a problem with that.
I
Yeah.
had I had a question for John. Did April have a site plan or a survey or anything showing this property? I mean, it was part of the building
there's
permit.
an aerial. I don't know.
Yeah, there's an aerial. Sometimes when property owners don't have a survey, we work with them. And for somebody to go out and have a survey done for the placement of a shed really doesn't sound very fair to just, a homeowner in this town. So in this case, I look at the aerial, I compare it to what's on the property appraiser's page, and, just look for any irregularities. And then honestly, I take them at their word. Otherwise, I was just checking the email that Mr. Siebert had sent to me in this process when I told him he couldn't have it there, to see what he said about why he couldn't put it in the rear.
When did he buy the house, April?
He
Did
said
tell us?
1999.
25 years ago, he said.
Okay.
Or more than
That's
25
good.
years ago.
Yeah.
He said more than. But he did say, yep, 1999.
Great.
He had a survey when he bought the property.
Sometimes people don't. It depends on how the sale happens. There are a lot of times when people don't have a survey. There have been instances where we say, sorry, this is not something we can do unless you get a new survey. Because like in that case, someone wanted to place a shed. It was in their rear yard. However, what was on the property appraiser's page did not show an adequate distance for where they said they were locating it. So I had to require a new survey in that case to really know what the lot dimensions were. And sure enough, in that case, what was on the property appraiser's page was wrong, so they had to update it. But in this case, there were plenty of space. His email is not coming up right away. If I remember correctly, I believe that he said his septic was in the backyard, which is why he was unable to put it there.
That's where mine is.
But I apologize, I don't see.
So April, nobody goes out and visually looks at it?
No.
I can say I drove by it, and all I saw was trees galore.
Mhm.
I kind of figured
No,
that.
not us.
No, no, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying it was trees galore, and I was like, that would be difficult to do anything. And again, if you look at Google Earth overhead, you barely see the top of the house because of all the trees. And there is where that X was marked in that picture, that looks like that kind of one open spot that you could put it. And that's why I motioned to approve it.
Is this permit, is it an owner builder permit, or did the shed company apply for the permit?
No, Mr. Zebra applied for it himself.
Okay. Because I see a lot of permits that come through from municipalities and just open permits for the county where it's a very rudimentary survey that's done, where it's just done, one step up from a cocktail napkin. They've got a 8 by 10 piece of paper, and they've got a square on there, and then they have dimensions. Okay, it's 200 feet to this fence. This is the square the house is. It doesn't have to be a professionally prepared survey in order to be helpful.
I call it a site plan.
Site plan,
Survey's done. by
plot plan,
professional.
plot plan or site
Site
plan,
plan
either one.
by
Yeah.
copy.
That is a very good point. So in this case, the first thing that I received with the permit application was just a sketch of the relationship of the shed to the house. And so I asked him if he could please to go back and just draw in on the property appraiser's aerial so that I can understand the relationship of this shed to the property boundaries. So he did that. And, this one, because it's not a variance per se, it's not a hardship test. So it doesn't have to even, be that he can't place it in the backyard necessarily, unless that's a reason that the board would want it to be there. It could be enough that he prefers it to be in the side yard. And if the board is okay with that, then that's okay too. So in my evaluation of this particular application is he wasn't looking to place it closer to the side property line or closer towards the front. It really still sits in a location that is not going to be an eyesore from the street or from the adjacent property. It is customary in other jurisdictions that I work with that sheds can be placed in the side yard as long as they meet, dimensional criteria and setback requirements. So, that is something that I see standard. Of course, every jurisdiction is different, but I see sheds in side yards a lot.
So whether or not, if there's a septic tank in the back, or it's 100-year-old oak trees, or the guy just wants to enjoy his backyard as is, kind of getting back to Josh's point, why are we blocking somebody's ability to put their shed, if they want to put it on the side of their yard? They don't need a reason. It's their property.
Well,
right?
currently the code, I'm sorry, Sean.
I was going to say, but you're still arguing that there should be some limitations because you don't want them in the front yard.
Well, right, and again, that's just a given. To me, you had a house that was their one option, and that is completely different. That's where it could come to the planning board, and we could say, hey,
Because they didn't even have a back lot.
right, they didn't have anywhere. It was such a weird piece of property, and that's one, as Fran brought up, it goes with the property. That one was some really weird, odd one. I don't think there's a ton of those around.
More than you think.
There's obviously some.
Because somebody was talking about the triangle, and I'm thinking DuPont Circle and Magnolia and
Yeah, that's where.
right.
Right.
But they were talking about the triangle at
Lakeshore.
Lakeshore.
Make sure there's that one. Yeah. Yep.
And Palmetto, I think, is the. I might get a point.
There is a few, and
Police know
Yeah.
the street names.
no, and I get that. It just you got to figure it's less than 1%.
Right.
And again, going back to like we had talked about, I think it was last year about all the variances for sheds. We've had several last year that's like, hey, I want to put this over here, and again, it was with the land. At the end of the day, it is their property as long as they're not going in the easement. And again, adjusting the code to say, okay, you can't come in the front yard. And if council decides they want it 10 feet back from the front, whatever, that's fine. You know, pick a number, not some crazy number like, oh, we want it 30 feet back. Again, you're still, you're tightly restricting it. Obviously, you can't touch easements. That's a public safety concern.
But we have had variances that want to go into the easement, right?
Again, I don't think that, I'm sure Morgan will speak up real quick about that and say, no, we're not touching easements.
Well, he just left the room.
No. Right. We don't touch easements for a reason.
That's actually no option even with a variance.
So, Eric, the reason that this has come is because this is come before us is because this is what our code says. So it has to be a variance for it to come to us. So if we don't want it to be by a variance, we need to change the code.
Well, his wasn't even a variance though. His was based on code. So letter
Code is not a variance.
50109.
It's asking for consideration.
Yeah.
But except that sheds are exempt from variance requirements, it
Gotcha.
would have been in that category.
Gotcha. Okay.
Of consideration.
Yeah, that one, I know this one was letter F of 50109. And again, I'm just looking through that of saying, you know, to me, the restriction of behind the house, behind the front plane, to me, it's asinine, quite frankly. And I would like us maybe next month or maybe April can draw something up. And again, she just mentioned a lot of the other municipalities she works in allow it in the side yards.
So would you like to know what all the municipalities that she works in say?
I would think that's chaotic. My bet is if I did the quick search and I didn't do the search, but my bet is the vast majority of them allow it because if you drive all over the place,
I mean, but what if it's
What they
5
allow.
or 10 feet? Or
that I don't
5
think that's a
feet?
bad idea. I don't think that's a bad idea at all to know if it's 5 feet, 10 feet, 8 feet, whatever. Like,
Municipalities do you represent besides Howie?
She can't hear you that well.
oh,
You gotta
speak in.
That's okay. I heard you. That's okay. I
They're in
heard
my
you.
head. Because I have my back to you. I felt bad, so I thought I'd turn around.
That's okay.
many-
That's very kind of you. So, so I've got Belle Isle, and I know that we do Montverde, Kissimmee. I do other work in St. Cloud. So I've got at least, you know, a handful that I can show you. Typically, what I've seen is that the sheds, particularly this type of size, so the smaller it is, then it usually just has to meet a 5-yard setback, 5-foot yard setback. Well, I can't speak for anything. A 5-foot side yard setback cannot be located in the front yard, and then that 5-foot side yard setback is also the same for the rear, which in this case, it would meet your rear setback for sheds. So, you know, I've not seen one where the shed has to be set back further than the front setback for the primary structure. So, you know, you could have your shed right beside your house, right? It just can't go in the front plane. It's like at my house, we have a shed in our side yard, but it doesn't go past the front of our house.
And what's our fence rule?
The Howie doesn't, it's not as strict. It's the HOA that does 8.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah, the HOA says specifically 8 feet from the front.
Yeah.
So kind of, you know, if we're going to need to, if it's going to benefit Howie to change, I mean, we're going to need to make a change then, I would say soon, because we've got 700 homes being developed right now just to the south of Talashe. We've got another 130 across from that. We've got another, you know, we're going to have 2,000 new homes being built here over the next 4 or 5 years. And this may or may not be a selling point for some people. You know, some people may, they love their sheds.
Actually, they get here and then they find out what the restrictions
As I say,
are.
most aren't going to ask, they're going to do, and then code enforcement's going to hit them.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
but honestly, I mean, if this board is going to disagree with how the code currently is and provide exceptions to that at every occasion, it makes sense to do it formally to propose a redo of the rules.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we're going to be slammed
Well, and then what's the point of, you know,
of having to code.
right.
I will tell you in 5 years, you've only had 3 shed placement issues come up. So
I know I've talked to several people in Tallahassee that want, and there was one that specifically said, "Hey, I want to put one in the side yard." I'm like, "You can't."
But
So he
what-
just gave up on it.
yeah, but what Eric is saying is we're going to double the number of homes
Oh,
we currently
absolutely.
have.
We're getting a lot smaller lots. Keep that in
Right.
mind. So if we're going to get a lot smaller lots, there's going to be people looking for, "Hey, I have a smaller house. I need more storage." And some, they might not be able to do it because they're only going to have 5 yard setbacks, which means you can't put a shed there. It's just not an option. But I do think, like April said, that if you're allowed to go up to the front plane, if most of them aren't having a requirement, have the 5 side, have the 5 back, which we already have 5 in the back. It states that. And again, then that even kind of eliminates the workshop problem. I mean, you can still list it in there, but at that point, why would you call it a workshop? Because you have to pay to put electric in it. You can just call it a shed and run electric if you want. But it kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone there. And again, like I said, my biggest thing was just bringing up the fact that we're restricting landowner use, which is something I could call my pet project.
I think a reasonable request without restricting their use would be, we're already pretty finite in terms of where the fences have to go. If they want a shed, it has to be inside their fence.
That
I wouldn't want to.
yeah.
I wouldn't
I
want to
think I
see
like that.
the shed in
Oh,
front
that would be crazy.
in front of a fence.
Yeah,
So
that would be.
even if it's behind the plane, it should be, if there's a fence on the property or they intend to fence in the property, the shed has to be within the fence area.
So
So if they started at the back of their house, then they wouldn't want to put a fence.
Correct.
Or if the fence starts at the back, we don't want them putting that.
The only thing
Exactly.
I would say is the fence goes to the property line, and you can't put a shed on the edge of the property.
No, but I still think we can have the 5 foot setback.
Yeah.
saying if
It
the
would,
fence
it would
is
still,
8
it can
feet
be
back,
anywhere
you don't
in
wanna
there,
say 5
but
feet
in
and
the
have
enclosed
Yeah.
area.
shed in
It's
front of
better
it.
for them too. No one breaks into it. They have another level of protection.
I think most people would do that. I'm not saying somebody wouldn't.
Except
Well-
here,
If you write it in, they do.
you're the first owner and you put a shed in 5 feet back because
Mhm.
that's what the code says. And the next owner, they have a boatload of kids
want to
and
build
they
a
put the
fence.
fence in
Yep.
and it says that it can go 8 feet back, which saves them 3 feet in buying fence
Mhm.
on each side because you try to make it even, right? So 6 feet of fencing you just saved money on, and that's what they're going to do. So I like the fact of wherever we put the fence, that it, even if you don't have a fence, but that would be a good thing because the next owner may put in a fence and then the shed would be in front of the fence.
Well, keep in mind the 8 foot I mentioned is an HOA rule.
Right. But
So the
but
town
what is that?
rule, you're allowed to have fences in your front yard. In the
Wait.
HOA, you can. So I'm
Consider,
looking at it right now. Sorry, go ahead, April.
oh no, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt you. What you could consider, because I'm looking at the diagram right now that shows those planes, you may be able to cure that issue about the fence if you restricted the sheds to only be allowed in the rear and side plane behind the primary structure. Because that way, since the fence is allowed in the front yard, I don't think you would ever run into a situation where that would make it so that a shed could be in front of the fence. If that makes any sense.
The only downside I see to that is if
Yeah.
somebody wants the shed in their side yard
And not in their back.
and not in their back side yard, if that makes
Right,
sense.
yeah.
But I understand
Yeah.
what you're saying, not putting the shed behind the rear plane of the house. But again, that doesn't work. This gentleman, for example, that wouldn't have worked for him.
But
Yeah,
you
you're
could
right.
word it where it's an or thing. It can either be behind the fence or behind the plane of the front of the house, whichever is further back.
I'm fine with that as long as April knows how to word it and go with that. If that makes sense to her, I'm fine with that. Again, at the end of the day, what I'm looking for is not restricting homeowners' use.
That way, well, that way, if their front yard is fenced in, it still can't be forward of the
Right, but I
plane.
totally agree with you that it would look kind of ridiculous to have your fence start at the back and then, I have my shed over here. I would
Yeah.
think for security purpose, most people will put it inside. But to Fran's point,
Right.
I put up a shed, it's in my side yard, and then somebody comes along and says, I want to fence, but I only want to fence the back. But that's the point that the town would have to catch it and be like, well, hey, you have a shed on your property, so you need to start in front of the shed.
Right.
And I think that would be not the norm,
Mhm.
but it could obviously.
It's
be.
going
But
to
if
be
you
the
word it
next
right,
owner
you're
or
covered.
whatever.
Right, and I'd be fine with that, as long as y'all are, I'm perfectly fine with that. I totally get what you're saying, that if you're gonna put a fence up, yeah, make sure the shed's inside of it so it doesn't look wonky and stupid.
But I do want to say, Josh, if you buy a postage stamp, right, and you have a big house on a small lot, then you don't get to have every single thing that
Understand?
somebody who has a huge house, I mean a huge lot and and a little tiny house gets to have. So you don't get the pool and the shed and the spa and the workshop and because there's just not enough room.
I totally understand that. I'm just going off talking to my neighbors, and a lot of them don't do their due diligence.
Right.
So then they just throw up buildings,
Mhm.
and then either code comes after them, HOA. Again, you got to remember, most of y'all that don't live in the HOA, you just have Howie coming after you.
Right.
You know, in the HOA, you not only have Howie coming after you, you have the HOA, you have the CAM, you have the board,
And
you have
it's
other
the
neighbors
neighbors
saying, "Oh,
that
well,
alert
you did
the
that."
HOA.
I've had tons of people say, "How'd you get your shed?" I'm like, "I got in before the
Yeah,
loophole was
Just
closed."
Mhm.
Well, how can I do it? And I'm like,
They're
go up and say something.
Right. So, but we don't, we, at one point, before you moved to town, we had requested, we as a board had requested that the salespeople, because they're not real estate agents, they're salespeople, tell potential buyers that you will not be able to put a pool in.
I can promise you that did not happen because they're trying to sell a house.
We know, but we requested that they do it because we had variances coming in and they couldn't fit the pool of their dreams on the teeny tiny backyard that they ended up with because they have a huge house. And I'm not saying they don't have a nice house. I'm not, slamming anybody or anything like that, but at some point you use up your whole footprint of
And I understand.
What's
And like I said,
basement
a
and
lot of
purpose.
this stuff doesn't apply to me. I can promise you if I hit the lotto, you'll know because I will have the Howie water park in my backyard. I have enough space. I'm one of the few lots that I could do that, and I will have a conveyor belt with tubes and everything. That's how you'll know if I hit the lotto. But again, that's my whole thing is, again, I'm not fighting for me.
Right.
This is thinking broad terms, and this even affected a gentleman, old Howie. Again, trying to think forward, and again, not restricting that land use is my biggest thing at the end of the
But
day.
you're right. They're trying to sell a house, and so they're going to promise you the moon and
Absolutely.
the stars, and then you get here and you're like, "Wait, what the heck? I wanted to
Howie
put in a
gives
pool."
pools out for free.
Yeah, I wanted a pool. What do you mean I can't have a pool? So,
Yeah. So yeah, sorry to hold you here that long, but this was one that was kind of.
do you have anything else
I think that is it.
as board comments, Eric? The floor is yours.
I have nothing at this time.
Richard,
I have nothing.
Alan.
We haven't heard the last of the 7-Eleven
Okay.
issue.
All right. And I do have a comment to make. I think you're talking about going forward, Eric, there's going to be twice the number of homes in in less than 10 years. And we all know it. And that's concerning that we have our ducks in a row. Okay. And I have lived a lot of places up and down the Eastern Seaboard. So I've had the opportunity to see how lots of communities do things. And we have the opportunity right now to make decisions and changes and kind of mold what we want to look at. Sean, you did for your thesis, you did walkable downtown. So like now's before the first building gets built, and I've been saying this for a couple years now, before the first building gets built, we need to talk about what we want it to look like. And unfortunately, I'm a little bit crushed about this. Unfortunately, Publix is not going to look like what we thought it was going to look like way before any of us were on planning and zoning. Maybe not Tina, because Tina's been on for years and years and years, but all the rest of us haven't been. And we're not getting what we thought we were going to get, which was that Spanish look to it that looked like Mission Inn, and it was in the packet, and now they're not doing it. And because they're not doing it, we couldn't force 7-Eleven to do it. So it's going to look like every other 7-Eleven. Our town isn't going to be the unique thing that people moved here for. How pretty it is and how quaint it is and beautiful Howey-in-the-Hills. Are we going to have big box stores? Is that what we're going to allow? On their own, the storage unit came with a design of that Spanish, but we didn't force them. They came with that. And because they knew that that's what we were looking for. So now's the opportunity to make it what we want it to be, what we want the future look to be. And I'm not talking people's houses or anything like that. I'm strictly talking commercial because we don't want all the houses to look like each other. We want them to all be different and unique. And so you can find your house in the dark.
So I guess I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
To your point then, Fran, is how do we go about researching who is here from Publix, who is presenting that information?
It'll be part of the minutes from that meeting. The who gets up and speaks.
Right.
Isn't that right, John?
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing to add, as you said, storage chose to do Spanish style.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Publix, 7-Eleven, all them, they're still following the code.
But Publix was in the packet that it was approved for Spanish motif. It was to look like, in quotes, Mission Inn.
And that would have to hold them to that. But my whole thing is
Years ago.
to your point of now's to make the change, then just like I'm trying to make the changes with sheds, it would be the time to change that. So yes, while we can't touch what's been approved,
Right.
going forward, if you want that walkable downtown, we could say, hey, we want Spanish style, we want the terracotta roofs, we want these things, if that's in the code, because then we can hold people to it. But even, again, I wasn't here for the 7-Eleven meeting because I would have caused a crazy uproar. Y'all probably would have shot me, and I understand that. But it followed the code.
Right.
That's the thing, is if they follow the code, and if we don't follow the code, then we as a board and then town council as the sitting council will open themselves up for legal liabilities. That's the biggest concern, is we can't vote always based on emotion and feeling and all that. We have to look at the code and say, this is what it says in black and white, and that's what we have to follow.
But there's a lot of room to negotiate. The guy that stood here from Publix said, as long as we don't change the foundation, the functional, he said we can certainly work on the facade and make it more what you're liking. And he stood here and said that.
Right. We're not changing inside. We're not changing the
No, I understand that.
or the aisles or, because he was like, oh my God. And we're like, we're not doing any of that. Just the facade.
But if we completely give up on that and just let them do what they want, that means you also gave up your right to 4 significant out parcels. Those 4 people that they lease to or sell to, they're not going to follow it either.
Well, if they come in, if the code's changed before then, and they come in for building, then they would be required to do it, correct?
No, that's
'cause they're owned by
because you
Publix.
approved that whole commercial area.
And the whole code too. So not just Publix itself.
I understand what you're saying, yeah.
Always
Yeah,
wrecked too.
you lost control of that.
You haven't reviewed the plans for the particular building, so they would also have to be reviewed for compliance with code as well.
Yeah.
But we've been talking
the
about
outparcels.
this.
For the out parcels.
The out parcels are different than the strip mall where Publix is.
Right.
So
Right.
Publix, that
So
strip
you'll
has been
Okay.
approved.
So to give you an example,
But
just,
it might be under, I'm sorry.
no, it's okay.
It might
If you-
be, sorry.
You go, Green.
Be under the umbrella of Publix, is it not? Because they own the land and they're subletting it to whoever's going to come in and build?
No.
Are you sure they don't own it still?
Well, we can ask April, but here again, you're going plot by plot. You're
Because
not
the-
going, it's just like he bought the commercial property.
Mhm.
We didn't give him carte blanche to build what he wants on all those pieces of property. We're gonna come back and review each building on its own.
I don't know how Publix operates, but I know that like McDonald's, you own the franchise. You own the store. You don't own the land that the store sits on. McDonald's owns it.
Publix will be leasing
Leasing
the
the land.
land
So-
in this situation.
So
But-
Publix owns it, so Publix doesn't have to follow, I mean, it's
Publix is leasing the land. Publix doesn't own the land, right?
No.
No, sorry.
They-
They're leasing to the land.
To
Whichever,
The-
XYZ.
But they can't demand of those other people what facade is going to be on those buildings.
The town would
Unless they make
regulate.
some agreement, but that's really up to the town to.
Publix has already
Always gonna
approved.
Come back to us.
So the buildings that Publix showed in their architectural elevations that were approved, those
Ones
are
that
the
we've-
only, those are the only,
But Publix still owns the land and they're leasing it to so and
So the
so.
main
For the main
building.
building, that we haven't seen anything on their out parcels.
But they're leasing the land for the outbuildings too, are they not, Sean?
Well, they own all the land.
They will determine what businesses go
Yeah.
in there. If they don't want Olive Garden, or if they do, they're the ones who
Olive Garden doesn't own the land that the Olive Garden is
Olive
sitting
Garden
on.
will lease the land from Publix.
Yes.
Publix will allow someone to come or not, but Olive Garden's still going to have to
Sean,
come.
you can't say that. They could sell it.
Well, they could. What they have been proposing up to this point, because there's
It's
different
not.
models. There's different models.
Currently, what you know is
What they're
Publix
proposing.
owns all the land.
Yes.
And at the time that something comes forward with a site plan for some other thing, it will have to follow whatever the code is at that time.
Correct.
So
So that's the whole thing, is going back to what you stated, is if you want to see those Spanish style and all that, now's the time to put it in, because when that comes forward on that out parcel, then there's a possibility you could force it. So at least the ones up front, the Publix might look ugly to whatever people say, but at least the ones up front, then, hey, you know what? This is what I see.
50-50.
That's a possibility.
Yes,
But I'm
possibility.
saying, and again, that's why I brought this up now, that let's address it now. Let's address this. Let's address those things in the
That
code.
was for how long now?
So,
Six
okay,
months?
But no, wait.
More?
This group, although there's different people, we have newer people on here. There was a review of the land development code for a 1.5 year long period,
Or
and some of the people overlap. Three people overlap. 4 people.
4 with Tina.
With Tina. So those people overlap. There was a whole long engaging. That was a key. I'm not saying you can't do changes.
It was a lot.
But that was the
Right.
time to propose and say everything in town should have a bell on it, or an arch, or be Spanish beige, or whatever the case may be. That was the time
Right,
to
that was
put it up.
22, 23.
I don't,
Yeah,
but it was
it
this
was,
much.
Right. Well, I know it was a lot, and that's kind of, as Sean brought up, is that would have been the perfect
I
time. And then
participated.
the 7-Eleven would have had to been Spanish style.
And I'll,
The
and I'll
stores
tell
would
you-
have had, but that's where we're kind of handicapped. And town council, people give them grief, but again, they had to vote based on what's in black and white.
Well, and I'll tell you, the input from the board at the time was only one person provided feedback, and that was after the deadline. But the input from this board in that process, yes, it was, and it was handwritten on
The napkin.
a legal pad.
He's
Didn't make it easy
filming
for the
me.
clerk. It didn't make it easy for the clerk. I did not name any names.
Well, at least there wasn't a cocktail napkin.
So exactly. But I'm just saying. So it was a 1.5 year long period, but input from the board was slim in
Right.
terms of.
So going back to where I was going to go before,
Come on.
has anybody here ever been to Sedona?
Yes.
The McDonald's?
No, not that I remember.
All right. What is McDonald's known? What is McDonald's known for? The Golden Arches. Sedona, they're blue.
French fries?
They're teal.
Uh-huh.
So everything instead of gold is teal, because that is what the code required.
Right.
So McDonald's, who is a big, we're going to beat you down, they had to follow the code.
Yeah.
I pulled up and I'm like, what the heck is going on? I don't know why or what the purpose was, but they basically said, you will not build this here unless it's teal. And McDonald's is like, well, I guess we're going to put it in teal. And again, I'm not saying we need to look like the villages, but if you think about the villages, they have specific code. That's why things look the way they do. And if we put that in our code, then they don't have a choice but to follow it.
Right.
But if it's not in our code, we can say, please, please, please. And they can say, Again, storage did it for us, great. But as you see, Publix is like, 7-Eleven's like, And again, anything else that goes over there is,
Back up from the town council either. We make a recommendation and it's like, I don't know,
But it's to Josh's point, it's in black and white.
Right.
There's, we could ask for diesel gasoline, but there's nothing in code that says,
Right.
Prohibiting of diesel gasolines.
Right.
Right. So council has to go by what's in
Right.
black and white.
We can't be in fear of being sued. I mean, I know that gets brought up at town council a lot. Unfortunately, I can't be here most Mondays, but I am online and listening. And so we can't be in fear of that. And you can't think, oh my God, what are the attorney fees going to be? We have insurance if we're sued. So we can't be like, oh my God, Publix is so big and whatever they say we have to do because they might sue us. And it's been said out loud in front of Publix. And I'm like, we shouldn't say that out loud because we have insurance to protect ourselves and we shouldn't get just because they're bigger, we shouldn't roll over and show them our bellies and say, so sorry, do whatever you want. Because we should stand our ground and it's our town. They don't live here.
But conversely, when an applicant comes forward and they've read your code and they've done their best to follow your code and they bring something in to say, yeah, that's not what I had in mind.
Right.
That is at the end of the
can't
day, and I think, and that's where, again, we have to follow what's in the code. If the code was changed and said you have to have teal arches instead of, golden arches, well, it's in the code.
But
Hey.
we've been talking about facades since I want to say September. We've just been kicking this can every meeting, kicking the can down the way, and we talk about it and we haven't moved forward. And had we moved forward in September, we could have forced the issue with the two applicants that are getting ready to build right now.
I think we could have asked. Again, it's not in the code. Again, it's asking. And I think several people, I think Alan brought it up at the November meeting of P&Z, and I believe the developer's response was, well, we'll follow the code. I believe, and again, I could be wrong, but I think that was brought up at that time.
In September, they had already put in their site plan application, so they were following the code that was then. If you had changed it since then, that wouldn't have mattered because
Right.
you would have had to put that in before they put in an application.
And I'm not here to point fingers or anything and say, oh, we could have, should have, would have. We need to do something now.
So just to bring this to a close real quick. So for Josh Huseman's suggestion on sheds, is there a consensus among the 6 of you for April to move forward and come up with an amendment to the land development code to make that happen?
Yes.
Yes, including the fact that it's either behind a fence or behind the front plane of the house, whichever is further back.
Yes, sir.
You have that, April?
Yes,
Okay,
I do.
So for the interest of moving forward here, so is there a consensus for April to change the land development code to require all new commercial builds to be of Spanish style in the house or in the town?
Like a Spanish facade.
Everything. Keep in
With
mind-
the exception of existing buildings
No,
don't
he
have
said
to.
new.
He said anything new.
Yeah.
So anything that's not approved as of today.
Do you
correct?
say Spanish Mediterranean? So it looks either like the Howey Mansion, or they have a choice, or Mission Inn.
I would say we let April give her some leeway there on wording. Obviously, we know what kind of Mission Inn looks like. I don't think we want to be so restrictive that you don't then get development.
Right. That's why I was
The
saying-
villages and
Either-
people up there are like, oh, here's your money. We're just not.
We could say either or, so that everything doesn't look the same exact way.
I think John had something else he was going to continue to say.
No, I just
I-
really want some sort of consensus for April to do something that'll come between you or before you, and then it'll go before the town council and we can move forward. It's not the staff doesn't necessarily have an opinion one way or the other. It's just
Is there,
this process along. I don't know that it's helping. It seems to me, go ahead, April.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, John. I have been thinking about this with all that's been going on. One of the things that you could do, because it does get difficult, just when you start talking about is this Spanish, is this Mediterranean? There is a starting place in the PUD developers agreement for Lake Hills, and there are pictures in there. You could put those pictures in the land development code and write the language so to say it must look like one of these styles. And if we're not sure what we're calling, the different styles, but it would show people what it must look like, and you would just have to use language that says it must be one of these, as opposed to that development agreement which said it must complement. So complement, that's the eye of the beholder. The current Publix design could look complementary to what it is. So I think if you could do something like that. The one thing that I would let you all know is that in the last legislative year, there was legislation that limits local governments from making regulations that make development harder. So, that is something that would be an issue if it's challenged. That doesn't stop you from moving forward and doing this, but just to let you know that's out there. And hopefully there'll be revisions to that in this legislative session. But, that's just a reality too, is if someone wanted to challenge that. But
I thought that was residential. It's residential and commercial?
it's for any development. So,
Got it. Thank you.
yeah.
Do you know, April, how many pictures that they had as samples for the, because I don't.
Sure. I believe there were 6 different pictures. 3 of them really showed a commercial building. So I can grab those from that, and you could propose that they be put in the code.
And those pictures had arrows. They were pointing to specific things, like a picture of a building, but then it said the arch, for example, and it was.
And that's what, and again, to April's point, that if we are too restrictive, then we're not going to get that walkable downtown. People are like, forget it. But that's why I think, yes, we can say we want this type of facade and say, hey, here's some options. They need to look like these options. There needs to be an arch. There needs to be this. There needs to be that. But then give some leeway that then they go, oh, okay, you're not restricting me. You're still giving me, options there. Because that's why I don't want to say.
Pictures are super helpful.
Yes.
And there's no ambiguity.
Right.
Well, one person's Mediterranean is another person's Spanish.
Right. I completely agree there. I just don't.
They're good.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, is to go with those pictures that April recommended and just have, however many points, but give some options so we're not being too restrictive, as we are trying to be less restrictive with sheds. Do we want to be more restrictive, and say, oh, we have one style and one style only?
I wouldn't mind seeing an example of what they will come up with.
Mhm.
I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
I would assume it would come back to us, so we would see it
Yeah.
before it goes to council. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That would be great if we could move forward on that.
So I would agree with that.
Okay.
Everybody in agreement?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great, wonderful. Thank you.
I would even recommend that one of the pictures be the Howey Mansion, since that is here.
Perfect.
And let's do something from Mission Inn. Well,
Yeah,
Mission
that-
Resort, I should say.
That would
Then they
be-
have
that would be
two,
great.
two examples. So
Okay. Thank you.
thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
You're very welcome.
Anybody have anything else for the good of the board?
There's my soapbox sometimes.
No?
Motion to adjourn.
There you go. Second.
Wait a second.
I was waiting for her to say something.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Wait.
He was the motion. I was the second.
Oh.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey.
Thank you very much for letting me sit in as chair.
Thank you.
Been an honor. And I couldn't have done it, obviously, without all of you. And I think we